So, what if the reality that you experience every single day isn't the real reality? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty mind-bending idea from philosophy and psychology, the notion that our consciousness actually has limits. But, and this is the important part, we're going to ask if it's possible to break right through them.
Let's just start with the big one, the central question. Are we trapped inside our own minds? Is everything we see, hear, and feel just projection, a movie playing inside our skulls? With absolutely no way to know what's really out there?
To really wrap our heads around this potential trap, we need to look at a map of reality that has pretty much shaped Western thought for centuries. Think of it as a kind of glass ceiling for the mind, a framework built by two absolute philosophical heavyweights.
At the very heart of this is a concept called the Kantian ceiling. The philosopher Immanuel Kant argued that we can never ever experience reality as it is. See, our minds aren't just passive windows looking out at the world. They're active constructors. They take in all this raw data and then shape it with these built-in settings, things like space, time, and cause and effect. So what we end up experiencing isn't the real world, but a version of it that's been customized just for us.
Then fast forward a bit, and the psychologist Carl Jung takes this big philosophical idea and applies it straight to the mind. He saw a perfect parallel. For Kant, there was this inaccessible thing in itself. For Jung, that became the psychoid realm, the ultimate unknowable foundation of everything. And just like Kant said reality gets filtered into what he called phenomena, Jung argued that we only ever experience the psychic images that bubble up from that deep, deep ground. He called those images archetypes. So long story short, both of these brilliant thinkers drew a line in the sand that they said consciousness just can't cross.
And the implication of this is just profound. In this model, any experience you might have of the divine, of God, isn't a direct line to God in itself. Nope, it's an encounter with the God image, an archetype that's already inside your own mind. The ultimate reality, whatever it is, stays forever behind a curtain.
But, and this is where the mystery really gets going, Jung, the very guy who helped build this ceiling, also started to notice some strange cracks appearing in it. His own research, his own observations, began to push right up against the very limits that he had so carefully laid out.
The funny thing is, Jung's own work started to poke holes in this framework. He came up with the idea of the unus mundus, or one world, which suggests that, hey, maybe mind and matter aren't separate things at all, but come from a single source. He documented synchronicity, those incredibly meaningful coincidences that seem to mysteriously connect our inner thoughts to outer events. All these concepts pointed toward a pretty startling possibility. Maybe the boundary between our inner and outer worlds wasn't a solid wall at all.
Let's just dig into that unus mundus idea for a second, because it's a real game changer. It's this wild suggestion that before our mind splits the world into me over here and the world out there, there's just a single unified reality. And you can see how this creates a huge tension in Jung's own model. If the unus mundus is real, then our psyche isn't cut off from reality. It's fundamentally rooted in it.
Ultimately, as these new ideas took hold, the role of the psyche itself started to shift. It began to feel less like an impenetrable veil that separates us from reality, and a lot more like a permeable threshold, a doorway that maybe, just maybe, we could actually pass through. So, you see the problem, right? The map Jung had drawn so carefully was starting to contradict itself. On the one hand, it's telling us we're trapped, but on the other hand, it's pointing to all these experiences that suggest we're not. This kind of intellectual tension, it just begged for a completely new map.
And it turns out that new map is actually an ancient one. It comes from these deep esoteric traditions like Neoplatonism, and it offers a radically different model of consciousness. Instead of a ceiling that traps us, it offers a ladder we can climb.
Okay, so here's the core difference. Let's put them side by side. The Kantian view basically sees consciousness as a fixed filter. It's just how we're wired, and that's that. But the esoteric view, it sees consciousness as something dynamic, more like a muscle that you can actually develop. The whole point isn't just to filter reality, but to evolve your ability to participate in it more and more deeply.
So how does this journey of evolution, sometimes called ontological ascent, actually work? Well, it's often described in stages. The first is purification, where the self gets cleared of all its distortions, kind of like polishing a dirty lens. Then comes illumination, where that clearer consciousness can start to perceive higher, more subtle levels of reality. And the final goal, union, or henosis, a state where that separation between you and the world just dissolves. You don't just look at reality anymore. You actually fuse with it. This all leads to a really powerful principle. Knowledge isn't just about information. It's a form of shared being. You can't truly know something just by looking at it from a distance. You have to become like it. To know the divine, your soul has to become divine-like. True transformation isn't about changing your mind. It's about changing your very being.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a bit mystical, right? Well, hang on, because it finds some pretty surprising support in modern psychological research. We're going to look at the work of a psychiatrist named Stanislav Grof, who has mapped states of consciousness that seem to provide real-world evidence for this exact kind of ascent.
Grof's map of the psyche is just huge. It starts at what he calls the biographical level, our personal memories, our life story. But then it goes way deeper, into the perinatal dimension, which involves these incredibly profound experiences of birth and death. And beyond even that is the transpersonal realm, where consciousness completely blows past the individual self, and you can access cosmic, ancestral, and deep mystical states of being. We are way outside the Kantian box now.
But here's what's absolutely wild. Grof found this universal pattern in the journey through that perinatal realm, which he calls the basic perinatal matrices. It's like a 4-act drama that everyone seems to go through. You start with the oceanic unity of the womb, then the crushing, no-exit pressure of contractions, then the titanic life-or-death struggle through the birth canal, and finally the ecstatic liberation and breakthrough of birth. And this isn't just about remembering being born. Grof says it's a deep archetypal pattern of death and rebirth that echoes the spiritual journeys people have been describing for thousands of years.
So what's the radical conclusion from Grof's decades of research? It's a bombshell, really. It's that consciousness appears to be primary. It's not just some ghost in the machine, not some random byproduct of brain chemistry. Instead, it seems to be the fundamental ground of reality itself, capable of accessing information and realms of being that are far, far beyond what our normal physical senses can pick up.
So, where does all of this leave us? Well, when you start combining Jung's initial insights with the deep wisdom of esoteric philosophy, and then you add in Grof's modern research, you arrive at a completely new and honestly a much more exciting vision of what consciousness is. And here's the big takeaway. That Kantian ceiling, that barrier we started this whole journey with, it isn't a permanent prison wall. It's more like a developmental veil. It's a stage that's probably necessary for our individual self to even form in the first place. But it's a veil that is meant to thin out, to become more and more translucent as we grow and evolve.
This gives us a whole new way to see ourselves. We aren't a finished product. We are what you could call a dynamic entelechy, a being whose very nature is to be in a constant process of becoming. Think of it like an acorn, which holds the entire potential of a giant oak tree inside it. Our deepest purpose, then, isn't just to exist, but to evolve, to grow into our fullest potential, which is nothing less than union with reality itself.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty awe-inspiring question. If our consciousness isn't some fixed endpoint, but an evolving journey, if that ceiling is in fact a ladder, then where are we all headed? What new ways of knowing, of being, and of participating in reality are waiting for us, right now, on the very next rung?